Hey everyone, Tony D with another hot take or political video, whatever these are. Um, so this one's about the whole Biden, Ukrainian, Trump thing. Who's going to win? Trump's going to win. Hate to tell you, hate to give you the spoiler. Trump's got this one in the bag. It's very complicated, but it boils down to this. Um, you know, Trump, first off, wouldn't be practically begging the Democrats to impeach him and, Joan wants to get up here. Hello. Wouldn't be begging to impeach him and begging to, or offering to show the transcript of his phone call if he didn't already know 100% that he didn't do anything wrong. The Ukraine has an incredibly complicated history. But just to give you some of the highlights that I know, and I've read about it. I've read about this quite a bit, actually. Easy, Joan, easy. For those of you who don't know, the Ukraine used to be the breadbasket of Russia and the Soviet Union. And this was prior to the rise of the Soviets and the communists. It was just miles and miles of farm, okay? This was... Easy, Joan. Easy. It's all right. This was during a time in the early 1900s and right before that when agrarian economies were very important. So they fed that area of the world pretty well. And then Stalin came to power. And he threw a lot of people in the gulag. And I'm glossing over a lot, but real quick, if you want to do some research your own. Jordan Peterson has some great videos on it, but I've been reading the Gulag Archipelago, and it's pretty horrifying. But Stalin, in his purges, put people away. I think the time period was like 12 years. I think that was the general sentence. It was either 12 or 8 or something like that. It was like a block of time. So during the purges, he'd just round up people and send them to the Gulag, which was a terrible, terrible situation. The Gulags were awful, awful prisons. Now, keep in mind, this is like the early 1900s. This is like 1910s, 20s, 1920s. So, not anything to do. Not a time where ventilation was a thing. I mean, the conditions were horrific, and they tortured you, both physically and mentally. And most people didn't even belong in the Gulag. They were thrown in there because Stalin kept everybody on edge. That's how he kept power. So, with regard to the Ukraine, the Soviet Union, the Russian speakers ran the show. So if you were a Ukrainian and you spoke Ukrainian and you supported Ukrainian customs, you were considered some backward country bumpkin who didn't deserve the time of day, certainly didn't deserve all the good jobs or anything like that. So the Russian Soviets poo-pooed the Ukrainians and drove them further west and took over all the good areas and ran the show slowly over a period of time. They also ruined the breadbasket that was the Ukraine. And one of the ways they did that, communism basically, they ran everything. The state would come in and, these academics would come into Ukrainian villages and they would say to the you'd have all these prosperous farmers and regular farmers, and then you'd have like a handful of guys sitting in a village tavern getting drunk, doing nothing, bemoaning their nothingness. And these, Soviets would come in and say to these guys in the tavern, you know why you don't have anything? It's because those prosperous people took it from you. The bourgeois took it from you, and you should take it from them. And so they would, because that's what the Soviets did. So all the prosperous farmers got thrown into the Gulag, and their lands were spread out over, people who didn't know what the hell they were doing. And soon everybody in the Ukraine was starving. And they were starving so bad that the Soviet government had to put up signs that said, do not eat your own children. That's pretty bad, starving-wise. It was a capital offense to steal grain, and they were so hungry they were trying to pick up grain from like the ground after a harvest. And that was illegal. And people went to the Gulag for that. You could go to the Gulag for almost anything. So when World War II rolled around, the Ukrainians, who hated the Soviet Union, a bunch of them joined the Nazis. And one of them, the main leader, was Stephen Bandera. Now, this doesn't condone Nazi behavior in the slightest, but, this gives you the background, right? Why they would join, who would join the Nazis? Well, the Ukrainians did, because they hated Stalin that much. So a bunch of the Ukrainians joined the Nazis, and Stephen Bandera became a Ukrainian hero from their perspective. Not mine, theirs. And so today, the Ukrainians, the current government, after the Russian-run government was pushed out, with the help of the United States, of course, that the Ukrainians took over, they have a huge block of neo-Nazis in the current government. This is just a well-known fact. So their muscle are neo-Nazis. And these guys, they're not desperate to get away from Stalin. These guys are anti-Semites, they're anti-gay, they're not nice people at all, and they are ruthless. And the United States, under the Obama administration, gave the Ukrainians tons of money. And how this connects to Biden is Biden's son was doing deals there. Biden went for a visit. There was a state prosecutor in the Ukraine investigating his son. Biden told the leader of the Ukraine, and he bragged about this. So this is not like some hidden thing. He bragged about it. It's on video. Google it. And he basically told the guy, if you don't get rid of this prosecutor, you're not going to get $1 billion in aid. And he told the guy, you got 6 hours before we leave. If he's not fired by then, no aid. And the guy said, you're not the president. He goes, call him. So Biden, he's got some cajones to do that. I mean, certainly. But the thing is, we shouldn't be giving the Ukraine $1 billion anyway. This is all, global chess that the Obama administration was playing against the Russians. They didn't want the Ukraine in the circle of the Russians. They want the Ukraine and NATO to push back against the Russians to keep the Russian Federation from growing. And most of this isn't military at all, because we outspend the Russians 10-1 in terms of our military. It's more economic. If they can keep the Russians on the defensive, if they can keep a country like the Ukraine in our sphere as opposed to their sphere, then, the Ukrainians, where's all their grain going to go once they get back up and running and selling grain again, or whatever they're going to export? It's all going to come to us. It's all going to be under our control. It's all going to be under control of U.S. companies and not the Russians. And the Russians are going to have to pay more, and it's going to keep their economic growth down, and that benefits, the globalists are playing this big giant chessboard. But there's all sorts of problems with that, which you can obviously see. The Russians resent that. We're supporting, the U.S. government is giving neo-Nazis money. This could all blow up in our faces. And when you have a puppet government, it's not considered legitimate by the people. And so what you end up is an incredibly corrupt government. Now, it could be very well that the state prosecutor that was investigating Biden's son is incredibly corrupt and was on the take by the Russians to investigate merely to cause trouble for the United States and push back. That could totally be true. But it's also true that Biden should not be intervening on behalf of his son. That is the very definition of corruption. And so what does this all have to do with the current Biden-Trump-Ukrainian thing? Well, this is all going to expose Biden more than it is Trump. Whatever Trump said in that transcript, I guarantee you it wasn't anything illegal. Biden, on the other hand, is exposed because his incident, which was long forgotten, is now going to come to the forefront. And in fact, the Ukrainians just announced they reopened the case against Biden's son. So this is gonna kneecap Biden. This is a kneecap. And he's going to be now on the defensive while the Democrats attempt to impeach Trump, which they will fail at, because even if they manage to get the votes in the House, and that's going to be a long shot at best, even though they have the majority, because people who voted for the whole Kavanaugh thing, they're not in office anymore. There's I think one Democratic senator who voted against going after impeaching Kavanaugh or going after him. He's still in office. The rest of the Democrats that pushed the Kavanaugh thing, they're gone. I believe that they were all senators. So what do you think's going to happen? The polls show the public in general, and I'm not just talking Republicans, the general public, the moderates, do not want Trump impeached. And because of that, it's going to be a lose-lose situation for the Democrats. The best they can hope for is they successfully impeach Trump. They push forth the impeachment resolutions, and the Senate's just not going to vote for it. They're not going to impeach their own guy, especially not their own guy who they don't consider having done anything impeachable. The Democrats are playing politics. They're hoping this just looks bad for Trump. And at this point, after 3 years of trying and failing to get Trump, the impeachment just sounds hollow and stupid and partisan. Even if there's anything in that phone call that could get Trump, who the hell in his base is going to believe it? Who the hell? No one's going. The Democrats have ruined their credibility in this area. They don't have anything else other than we're not Donald Trump. We're not Donald Trump. If they would just admit, look, the economy's doing well, and go after them on things that they could do better, but they have nothing to offer, really. What are they going to offer at this point? They can't offer up a better economy, especially with Biden. That is a hard sell at best. So the economy is the main thing. So you go to foreign policy, what do they have to offer? Biden is not, he's not a total war hawk, but he's not a very peaceful guy, and he'd have to defend all the Obama administration's attacks. And there are a lot of them. Drone attacks, the whole Libya fiasco. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. This is really Obama versus Trump. And that's not going to be a good matchup. Because by the time Obama was done, people were getting sick of him. I mean, yes, he had a lot of support early on. When you have a ton of support early on, you have just time to lose it. But when you're like Trump, you start at the bottom, everybody hates you, you have nowhere to go but up. And that's where Trump has gone. He's gone up, and he continues to go up. And he will continue to go up. I mean, it'll drop down, but his general trend is going up. That's because he was in the basement when he started. So he continues to look better and better. I mean, his approval ratings are amazing. They're just amazing considering all the bad press, considering all the horrible things they've accused him of. And look, again, I'm not a Trump supporter. I'm a libertarian. I don't wish the guy ill. I think he's doing well. I can at least acknowledge what he's done. The Democrats refuse to. They refuse to acknowledge Trump's accomplishments, and they refuse to acknowledge their own shortcomings. So, what has Biden got? Biden can basically say, well, I'm going to wind back the clock. It's going to be normal again. I'm not going to be bombastic like Trump and tweet all the time. It's not much of an offer, especially to people who aren't on Twitter. And that's a lot of people, more and more people every day, I'll add. So I think this is just a total disaster for the Democrats. I used to be a Democrat. Listen, Democrats, you got to turn the boat around here. All right? Forget about this election. It's done. Trump is in. But stop destroying your party, for God's sakes. I mean, the Democrats used to stand for something. Now, what do they stand for? We're not Trump. Well, Trump's not going to be in office after 2024, so I mean, what are you going to run on next time? I mean, you got to start looking towards the future here. And the candidates you're putting up, the guys who are in the lead, they just look disastrous. You know, with few exceptions. Tulsi Gabbard looked good, I think. I don't agree with everything she says, but she had some good takes. And she's willing to reach across the aisle. She helped Trump early on. You know, I mean, she was like the one Democrat that helped Trump during the whole Syrian thing, and she gets blasted for it. Why should she get blasted? Because she helped the president of the United States. Look, I hated Bush, but I mean, he was the president. What am I supposed to say if somebody brings him a cup of coffee? You bastard! How dare you bring him a cup of coffee? You should have thrown it in his face. It's not that, stringent. You can't be that anti anybody. You have to acknowledge a loss here. I mean, look, I thought Trump, Bush, and Cheney were the worst. The absolute worst. But, I wanted them to succeed. I still lived in the country they ran. So, come on. You still live here, Democrats. This is not an all or nothing situation. This is not a zero-sum game. You have to look towards the future. And the future is not Biden. Sorry.